My triggers. Went from straight to high school to a holding cell, and I stayed there for 45 days because my dad was trying to teach me a lesson.
Well, it worked, right? Because when you came out,
No, not the first time.
Not
like
the first time.
The second time, maybe the third, probably the second. It was definitely the second. Now that the election's over, I hear a lot of talking points that I've been saying myself for the last 2 or 3 years. I am your consumer. I am your voter base. I'm telling you what's the problem and you're just dismissing me. I want whoever's in that office to do right by American people, to do right by working class people. And right now I see a lot of working class people hurting.
Charlamagne, welcome to TRIGGERnometry, man.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. What's happening?
It's great to have you. Listen,
My triggers.
we did at one point for one of our comedy shows, we had the idea of calling it Triggers with Attitude, but we didn't think we could get away with it.
I mean, I don't know. I would find it kind of funny, you know?
Yeah.
Triggers with attitudes, it would make sense.
Yeah.
Because it's trigonometry,
Yeah.
you know? You might get a little flack, who knows? I don't know how sensitive people are nowadays.
Pretty fucking sensitive,
Yeah.
especially in the UK, man.
Absolutely.
But anyway, it's good to have you on. Listen, one of the interesting things about you is, you know, you're in the Radio Hall of Fame, very successful, you've done incredibly well. But from very difficult beginnings, from what I've been reading, at one point, your dad wouldn't bail you out of jail for like 40 days?
Yeah, I was a hard-headed little kid. And, you know, growing up in Moss Corner, South Carolina, being involved in a lot of things I didn't have no business being involved in, it started with me getting in trouble in school. So I had already gotten kicked out of one school, which was Berkeley High School in Moss Corner, South Carolina. But, you know, the assistant principal there at the time, her name was Miss Sadie Brown. She believed in me, so she was like, listen, cause I didn't even go to the expulsion hearing. I went to class like I didn't even have an expulsion hearing. Didn't tell my parents about it or nothing like that. And so she was like, look, let's not expel him. Let's just transfer him to, you know, Stratford High School. That's where his mom teaches at. You know, maybe him being in the same school that his mom taught at will, you know, keep him on the straight and narrow. And I mean, I guess it did for a little while, but I was still, you know, kicking it with my homies who was, you know, in the street at the time. Because this is when around the time all of us was either dropping out of school or the ones that those of us that were still in school were like juniors and seniors. So we was like right there, 17, 18 years old. And I got arrested from Stratford High School because I was in the back seat of a car and one of my homeboys shot at somebody. And so the guy that he shot at was actually somebody who went to the school I went to, Stratford High School. And so they came and arrested me from class that day. And so I went from sitting in high school, my junior year, senior year, it wasn't a senior year, I never made it to my senior year. So like my double sophomore year, because I don't think I made it to my sophomore year because I got left back twice. So my double sophomore year, went from straight to high school to a holding cell, and I stayed there for 45 days because my dad was trying to teach me a lesson.
Well, it worked, right? Because when you came out,
not the first time.
Not
like the second time. Maybe the third, probably the second. It was definitely the second. It was definitely the second because the second time I went to jail, this when I got into selling, you know, a little bit of dope and I was selling crack and I was involved in a drug bust. So it was like 15 of us that ended up, you know, going to the Berkeley County Detention Center. And I remember sitting in the holding cell and that was when I was like, all right, I can't live like this no more. Like this got to change. And my dad used to always tell me, man, you know, in order to change your life, you know, you got to change your lifestyle. And so that's what really made me say, this is it, I'm done. I'm really gonna start doing different things. Because, you know, my dad would always say, if you don't change your lifestyle, you're gonna end up in jail, dead, or broke sitting under a tree. Mm-hmm. And when you start to see that actually happen to people around you, you know, you start going to jail yourself, you know people that are actually going to prison. I was just in the detention center. People were actually going to prison for 5 years. And, you know, you see people around you actually dying and you see people around you that you used to look up to literally sitting under a tree, you know, broke, you know, not doing anything with their life. You know, you kind of snap out of it real quick if you got sense. You know, I always say smart people learn from their own mistakes, wise people learn from the mistakes of others. I don't always have to, you know, make the mistake to learn from it. I can watch other people go through it, and that's what happened.
One of the hard things when you get into bad habits or doing bad things is, in order to let that go, you'll have to let people go as well, like the people who are around you who are into that stuff. Was that difficult? Did you have to do that?
It wasn't difficult because I had just found a girlfriend.
Okay.
And so I just found a girlfriend and she didn't live in Moss Corner. She lived like in another town, it was Goose Creek, Latson area. And so when you have, you rather be with your girl anyway than be with a bunch of guys, right? So, you spending a bunch of time with your girlfriend, that helps to shift the lifestyle. That helps to change the lifestyle. So it is, I guess, difficult, but it's not difficult when you have something better to do. And, one vagina beats 5 dicks all day. if you're heterosexual,
Has that changed the way that you view the world because of the past experiences of being in jail? Like, a lot of people talk about jail and a lot of people talk about incarceration, but you've experienced it. So you've got a real world knowledge of it. Has that changed the way you see things?
Well, once again, I've never been to prison, you know what I mean? But I've been to the Berkeley County Detention Center, where you wearing the orange jumpsuit. I was there for 45 days. So it's definitely jail. But yeah, it helps you to change. It helps you to see the world differently because, you have a lot more grace for people who come from certain environments because, I was able to turn my life around and, become who I am today. Anybody can do that with the right opportunity and the right guidance. I think that sometimes, we punish people and we cancel people for things that they were never even taught, right? We never even took the time to teach this next generation. Like if we talk about how bad the youth is, then we failed somewhere. You know what I mean? Like if we talk about how bad these kids are, then what have we not been doing? Clearly we haven't been instilling in this next generation the wisdom that they need. Like even though my dad, had his own issues when it came to, the law, and he had his own issues when it came to mental health, he was always on my ass to be better. I say all the time, my dad raised me out of fear and not love because it was the fear that I would become like him. He wanted me to be better than him. So he was always on me. Like he was a disciplinarian. He was always on me to educate myself. He was always telling me, you're gonna end up just like these guys. You end up in jail dead or broke sitting under the tree. You need people to constantly be on you like that. And some people are smart enough to listen to those who came before them and learn, and some of them are not. And, they make poor choices.
It's a really important point because I think one of the things really affecting not only the US, but also the UK, and this is all communities and demographics, is a lack of fatherlessness. I was working in a part of East London, ironically called Stratford, near Stratford. Wow. And, I could tell the kids that were struggling, the kids that weren't going to do well, or not just do well, but not fulfill their potential, were the ones who didn't have a father around. It was just so obvious.
I mean, listen, we talk about girls who end up being whores, and we say, they didn't have a pops. So what happens to guys who don't have a father either? Like, I'm sure it's the same type of mentality, right? Like you need a man, you need a strong man in your life, you need a strong woman in your life to have that balance, And I talk about my daddy issues all the time. Like one of my first breakthroughs in therapy, where I'm boohoo crying, was because I was saying to myself, damn, my dad used to discipline me for things that he never taught me, right? So how you gonna discipline your young teenage son for things for not knowing things or making mistakes when you had the opportunity to teach him? So that's why I don't think we do the next generation any favors by keeping secrets. I don't think we, do our kids any favors by keeping secrets. And to your point, I don't respect no man who's not in his child's life. Like you can't treat children like, a candy wrapper. Like you eat the candy bar and just throw the wrapper and don't give the wrapper down. Like, you can't eat the pussy, put your dick in it, nut in it. She gets pregnant, have the baby, and you just disappear. Like, who are you?
That was the thing that shocked me when I became a father just under 3 years ago now. It's like how any man can walk away from that and feel good about himself. I'm not judging really, although maybe I am to some extent, but I just can't relate. I don't get it.
Different level of sociopath.
Yeah.
I don't want to diagnose nobody, but there's no way you watch your child come into this world. I've watched all 4 of my beautiful daughters, by the same woman, by the way. That's very important to say, my beautiful wife. I've watched all of my daughters come into this world. There's no way you watch that experience. There's no way you hug your child. There's no way you kiss your child, be around your child, watch your child's first steps, listen to your child's first words. There's no way you experience that and walk away from it if you're not some type of like sociopath, like psychopath almost. Like this, I don't understand it.
Because it's not only the damage that it does to you, but the damage to the kid, but the damage it does to society. You just see it. I saw the kids that I taught. The ones that were going into gangs were the ones who didn't have a dad around. For two reasons. Number one, because when a boy gets to a certain age, mum can't control them. And number two, because you need a father like you had, like we had, to go, don't do this. You do this, this is what's going to happen.
That's right. It's really just that simple. You know, it's like the yin and the yang, right? Like, you know, we talk about the sacred masculine and the divine feminine, or the divine masculine and the sacred feminine. You need both. Like, we as human beings are made of two ingredients, male and female. It took both of them to make us. So imagine when you have the absence of one, and you got to grow up as a boy to a young man, and then try to figure out how to be a man. Like, it's just those little simple things that you miss, right? And yeah, I feel like a lot of times, often even in my own personal life, I didn't have the father-son relationship that I would have loved to have with my dad. Now, mind you, my dad is still alive, but man, sometimes I get around my pops and I turn back to that little boy who just wants my daddy's approval, and it makes me uncomfortable. It just does, like, you know, because as you get older, what you're gonna realize is that, you know, every day, all you're doing is realizing it's a constant battle between your adult life and your inner child. So it's things that happen to you in your adult life that you can trace directly back, you know, to your childhood. So it's almost like you become the father to your 5-year-old self, your 10-year-old self, your 15-year-old self, you know, your 20-year-old self, because that self, at least for me, didn't necessarily have my pops there the way that I wanted to. But that's for a number of reasons. My dad had his own issues, and that's why I give him a lot of grace, because he tried, but he was busy battling his own issues. He had his own substance abuse issues. He had his own mental health issues. I didn't find out about his mental health issues until 2018. You know, to 2018, he told me that, you know, he'd been going to therapy. He was going to therapy 2 and 3 times a week. He was on 10 to 12 different medications for, you know, his mental health. He tried to commit suicide 30 plus years ago. I didn't know any of that. But when I found that out, it allowed me to give him a lot of grace, because I realized he was just a man trying to figure things out the way I'm a man just trying to figure things out.
Well said, man. Well, anyway, enough of the sad stuff, right? You've had a great career. How did that happen? How did you get...
First of all, I love the UK, by the way, because y'all just get right to the punches. Okay, enough of the sad shit, right? Okay, goddamn it. Cry me a motherfucking river, okay, your daddy wasn't in your life. Whoop-de-woo, right?
The daddy issues, oh no.
Daddy issues,
no, you know what, man? Just for the seriousness of it, I will say I really respect that you talk about this shit. And
Absolutely.
I think, especially if you're like a masculine man, it's looked down upon, and the fact that you're bringing that up and we can talk about it, I think that's great.
Absolutely.
I think that's great. But I also want to look at some of the success you've had. You know, one of the things I find really cool about you is, like, you know, Francis and I, we like to rub a few people up the wrong way and talk about difficult issues on our show. And you've always had that in your career as well. You know, you've been, I mean, cancelled, not cancelled, I don't know what it is, but like, you've always had that attitude as well, right?
The prince of pissing people off.
That was my moniker. You know what I did? I call it the Eminem and 8 Mile theory. Like, you know, you own whatever it is people say about you. So when people used to be like, God damn, he's an asshole, you know, oh my God, he makes me sick. Yeah, I'm the ruler of rubbing you the wrong way. You know, the prince of pissing people off, the architect of aggravation, you know? And so there was a time I would purposely push buttons, and, you know, I don't purposely push them now, but they still get pushed.
Yeah.
So maybe I am a natural asshole. I don't strive to be.
That's not my read. I don't think that's not my read of you at all. I think you probably rub people up the wrong way and push buttons by saying things that make them uncomfortable, but you think are true. That's my read on it.
Yeah, and I'm just like not smart enough to like, you know, navigate a room with big words. You know how like you have these people that like to use these big 25-letter Shakespearean words because they think it makes them sound smarter. It's
English people.
Yeah, for me, I just like to get right to the point. And I think sometimes just getting right to the point comes off as harsh.
You know what? I sometimes think the reason that people use those 25-letter words is to make themselves look more intelligent, but also it's to actually disguise and hide what they're actually saying. Because if you break down what they're actually saying and you take those big words out, you go, you're not actually saying anything of value.
Exactly. Here. And I'm just not that smart. Like I'm just not, I don't know those words. I know some of them. You know what I mean? So I would just rather ask you the question in my plain, basic terms. That's it.
Well, one of the things I want to ask you in the current climate, obviously things are very heated politically. And the first time I saw the recent thing of yours was with Josh Shapiro, who I find a very interesting person on the left.
I like that guy a lot.
Interesting guy. But where are you political yourself? Are you neutral? Do you stay out of it? Like, what do you see?
You know, I got a great friend. You know, she's really big in America. Her name is Nina Turner, former senator of Ohio. You know, fantastic human being, and she always says, you know, you don't have to do politics because politics is going to do you. So, you know, you can sit around and, you know, ignore politics and say you're not a political person. If you pay taxes, you're a political person. If you live in a country where there's a democracy, you're a political person, whether you want to be or not, because, you know, the legislation that's passed, the things that democracy is doing will impact you. So, yes, yeah, I am a political person. I'm a political person, number one, because I do really enjoy it. You know, politics has become pop culture.
It has.
You know, since Obama. You know, well, actually, the 90s with Bill Clinton when he was playing the saxophone on Arsenio Hall and getting blowjobs in the Oval Office. Like, that was pop culture. It's like, oh, like those are references you hear on comedy shows and rap albums, all of that type of stuff. But then Obama really became a superstar celebrity by doing the work, not because he was seeking it or, you know, wanting the attention. He was just doing the work. First black president. Then comes the actual executive producer of Celebrity Apprentice, a real life celebrity. America's obsession with celebrity caused them to elect the executive producer of Celebrity Apprentice. So therefore, it really became, you know, pop culture, and he's been the main star of politics since, you know, 2016. So I really do enjoy it. I enjoy watching CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and, you know, watching the Young Turks on YouTube. And, you know, I watch Jon Stewart's Daily Show and The Weekly Show. I like watching the Native Land podcast. All of these different places I go to get, you know, entertainment news. I watch political news. I watch Candace Owens. You know, I watch, I'm blanking on the name right now. What's Patrick David?
Patrick Bet David.
Patrick Bet David.
Yeah.
You know, I watch all of that stuff because it's entertaining, you know, and, you know, you do get informed. And I like to watch all sides. Like, I'm not just watching what's happening on the left. I'm watching what's happening on the right. I want to hear what everybody is talking about.
And where do you come out? Are you happy about Trump being elected and the things he's doing? How do you feel about it?
I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm not happy. I'm just indifferent because I didn't vote for Donald Trump. You know, I voted for Vice President Kamala Harris, but at the end of the day, I'm still an American. So during campaign season, you know, everybody can say they're left, right. I'm registered as an independent, but, you know, everybody can say they're left, everybody can say they're right. But when that person wins, we're all on the same team, which is Team America. And so it's just like, yeah, I want what's best for the country. I want, you know, to see I want whoever's in that office to do right by American people, to do right by working class people. And right now I see a lot of working class people hurting. You know, when I see what, you know, Doge is doing, you know, firing all of those federal workers, man. I was down in Maryland a few weeks ago for my daughter's cheerleading competition, and the amount of people who were coming up to me telling me they either had lost their job or they may lose their job, that hurts. When you see people complaining about, you know, the high price of groceries, the high price of, you know, just any type of consumer good, that hurts to hear, especially when he ran on the economy. He literally said, you know, I ran and won by using one word, groceries. That's what he said. So if the price of groceries is sky high, you know, if inflation is high, you know, if people are losing their jobs, if the economy's messed up, that's not good for us as a people, because working class people are hurting. So that's not good for us right now.
And this is a thing that I don't understand. And we've got the exact same problem in the UK, by the way. And that the three of us sitting around this table are very fortunate. We're very fortunate and we're very lucky.
Absolutely.
But when you go into a supermarket, I just pick things up and I go, I don't understand how people are meant to afford this. When I was a teacher, I was on very low wages. I dread to think how I would have been able to not even live, just exist nowadays.
Yeah, you know, I think about that all the time because my mother was an English teacher, right? Growing up in Moss Corner, South Carolina. And I remember one time she told me the most she made in a year was $30,000. She had 5 kids. It was my older sister, it was me, my 2 younger brothers, and my younger sister. We lived in a single wide trailer for a long time. And like I said, my dad was a hard-working person, but, you know, at times he wasn't there because he was, you know, battling his own substance abuse issues and stuff like that. So I always wondered, like, man, how did we make it? Because, I didn't pay attention to the cost of groceries. You know what I paid attention to? Having $5 and being able to go in a Food Lion in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, and buying a 99-cent box of oatmeal cream pies, and it was 12 in a box, and buying a 3-liter freaking orange soda or grape soda for another 99 cents. So plus tax, it was $1.04. I remember being able to go to McDonald's and getting 2 cheeseburgers and a large fry for $2.99, which came out to like $3.14. I remember when the tax increased on that, and because at one point it was like $3.05 or something like that. Then when it went up $3.14, I remember things like that. So now when you see like the 2 cheeseburger meal cost $7, $8, or you see the oatmeal cream pies might be $2 or $3 a box, you like, damn, times have really changed. But I couldn't imagine having to go into a grocery store and having $30,000, making $30,000 a year in this environment and trying to feed 5 kids.
Yeah.
I couldn't even fathom it.
And then when you factor in rent has gone up.
Oh my God.
The utility bills have gone up.
Oh my God.
And then you go, no wonder people are angry. You can't have a cohesive society if you've just got all of these people who've done nothing wrong. They're working jobs, they're working hard. Being a teacher is an important job. And they can't even make a living.
Let's be honest, this economy's been brutal. Mortgage, childcare, energy bills, and for a lot of homeowners, credit cards have become the fallback. But with interest rates upwards of 20%, that debt piles up fast. That's where American financing comes in. They're not your typical lender. They're family-owned, have been around for 25 years, and are licensed in all 50 states of the United States. No board, no investors, just a team focused on helping you save. Their mortgage consultants are salary-based, so they won't push a loan that doesn't make sense. And there are no upfront or hidden fees. You won't pay a dime to find out how much you could save. And the savings are real. Homeowners working with American Financing save an average of $800 a month. They look at your full financial picture, credit cards, car loans, mortgage, and see how you can reduce your total payments. They've already helped hundreds of thousands of Americans. Just check their Google reviews. So take 10 minutes, call 866-886-5350. Or go to americanfinancing.net/TRIGGERnometry. Start feeling that relief today. That's 866-886-5350.
And then, especially here in America, the criticism that was happening as far as like the border is concerned was super valid. And I remember last January, my activist friends in Chicago were telling me about the problems of the migrants coming into their city and causing problems in their neighborhoods, and they were getting resources that people that were in these poor and disenfranchised communities for years weren't getting. I remember in New York City when they closed down the school for a day to let the migrants stay in the school, and all of the parents from the school were calling like, yo, this is some bullshit. Like our kids had to stay home and do homeschooling for the day just because they want to house these migrants. I know this. I tell this story all the time because it's a true story. There's a parking attendant I know in New York City, and I park my car there a lot, and he came to me in tears. I mean, crying to me, telling me how, MS-13 had came through was in his neighborhood and was raising holy hell. And he was like, I know it's because of the fucking border. They gotta close the border. He wanted me to come to his neighborhood to see, what was going on. And I remember, man, just going to the radio and having these conversations. And I did an interview with Fox News, and I told the guy at Fox News, because he asked me, he said, what do you think about, he said, you think the border's gonna be a problem come November? And I told him all those stories I just told you. MSNBC ran the headline that said, Charlamagne the God is spreading MAGA messaging. I'm like, nobody I spoke to was MAGA. These were black activists in Chicago. These were black people calling from New York City. This was a Spanish man across the street at the parking garage. It wasn't even about, none of them were talking about politics. They were talking about being inconvenienced in their everyday lives. That's it, nothing more. For the left to ignore that for as long as they did, that was a real, real, real grave miscalculation, man. Even when the stimulus checks went out. And I remember arguing with some very, very well-off people. And they were, I remember one guy in particular, I'm not gonna say his name, but I remember he said to me, man, if you can be moved by a $1,200 stimulus check, then I don't wanna talk to them no way. I said, you've been rich way too long. You've been rich way too long and disconnected way too long. Somebody will kill you for $1,200. Literally, pull out $1,200 somewhere where there's some people that need that freaking money and watch what they do to you. So it's like, yo, the fact that you just thought that that was nothing and you couldn't understand how that impacted people. You know who did understand that? Donald Trump. That's why Donald Trump held those checks up and made sure his name was on them when they went out, because he knew the type of impact that was gonna have on everyday working class people. And guess what? All his political calculations were right, and all the left's political calculations were wrong. And it's just that simple, because a lot of times, you know, the left especially talks about people that they never talk to. And I'm not no political expert. I'm just a person that is out here with the people, talking to people from rural areas in South Carolina where I'm from, to, you know, the hoods in Newark, you know, New Jersey, to, you know, Harlem when I'm, you know, doing work with the food bank, whatever it is. On the radio every day, the Breakfast Club, Alice Randall said this. She said, the Breakfast Club is America's front porch. And I sit on that front porch every day with my co-hosts, and we talk to everyday working class people, and they tell us what's going on. And that's where I think the disconnect is with a lot of elected officials in our country.
There's so many interesting things you said there. And one of them, it seems a bit of a contradiction, because you were saying that Trump had got everything right, but you voted for Vice President Harris. So what was your thinking behind that?
Oh, it's a difference between what I think a person is actually going to do when they get in the White House and what a person does to win an election.
I see what you're
When it comes to what he was doing to win an election, he got every political calculation right, and the left was getting every political calculation wrong. The left was focusing on the left was focusing on minors. Republicans were focusing on the majors. Now, you know, Project 2025 is real, and it was right there laid out for people, and he didn't hide anything. He told you exactly what he was going to do, but he was still speaking to people's dinner table issues. He was speaking to the basics: security and money, economy and security. Whatever way you want to flip it, I say it all the time. If you are a human being on this planet, there's two things you want. You want to be financially stable, and you want to be safe. That's it. Whoever can make you believe they're going to keep some money in your pocket and keep you safe, that's who you're going to rock with. That's what we all want. That's what we call security, financial security, physical security, whatever it is. You want money in your pocket and you want to feel safe. Whoever can make you feel like they're going to do those two things for you will win every election.
That's really interesting. And the other point you made, I was going to sort of double click on as well, is really interesting about the MAGA messaging. And this is a thing that for us in Britain, watching American politics from the outside, like every time a black person says anything that's outside the Democratic messaging, it's like they're trying to take their black card away straight away. Like, what's that about? You ain't black, Joe Biden said it. Like Don Lemon was on Bill Maher's show the other day.
It's silly, and it actually exists on both sides, because you'll have conservatives that are black and MAGA who will tell the liberals they're stuck on the Democratic plantation. And then you have the black liberals who'll tell black MAGA, y'all a bunch of coons and y'all a bunch of Uncle Toms. So it's literally on both sides. And I'm like, man, for me, if you black in America, you shouldn't be beholden to any political party.
Right.
Because neither one of these political parties have really delivered for us, period. Like, you know, like that's just always been my thought process. Like neither one of these parties have delivered for us. Whenever you get to the point where you're having debates on whether or not you're voting for the lesser of two evils, or you're voting for the person who's going to do the least harm, you're in a bad situation. Because you're saying both of them are going to hurt me, but let me pick the person who's going to do the least harm to me. That's like pretty insane when you think about it. Like, why are we stuck with these two choices? And I think right now, what you saw, at least in this last election, was a backlash to people saying, I'm good with either. Meaning, I don't care either way. I was saying for a whole year, this election was going to come down to the Democrats, who are the cowards. They don't fight hard for nothing. Still don't, even right now. The Republicans, who are the crooks, because they're going to tell you everything you want to hear to get in position, to rob you blind. And then you got the couch. And I think the couch, you know, won a lot this election. I think a lot of people just simply stayed home. When have you ever seen a Republican in America? When's the last time you saw a Republican in America win the popular vote? He didn't win the popular vote by like some enormous amount. I think it was like 2,000 votes or something that separated them or something. I can't remember the exact number, but
It was small. Yeah,
it was
margin
very,
was
very
small.
small. It wasn't this huge mandate by the American people like, like the Republicans like to make it out to be. So that just lets me know that there's a lot of people who are just unhappy with what's going on in America. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the midterms, if we have a midterm. I got a feeling that they might call the midterms off. I really do.
Why do you say that?
I just feel like, I can see them saying, hey, man, we've uncovered, massive voter fraud, from the past, or massive voter fraud from the last election. The elections, aren't, we're not a stable enough, we don't have a stable enough, democracy right now to be able to, have the election. I just really feel like, I don't know what he's going to say, because he says a lot of wild shit. Mm-hmm. I just feel like he's going to say something that's going to be revolving around the elections and elections being fraudulent. And he's going to be like, we're not having the midterms right now. I can see some shit like that happening. I really can. And then 2028, I saw Steve Bannon say today, I'm looking forward to Donald Trump running for a third term. He said it to you, like, and I think he was interviewing with, I forgot who he was interviewing. Chris Cuomo. Yeah. And Chris Cuomo goes, but there's term limits. He said, yeah, we're working on that.
So do you think that's legit, or do you think that's Bannon talking shit?
Why do we have any reason to think it's not legit?
Yeah.
Like, I have no reason to believe it's not legit. And you know what's even stupider? There's already people talk right now like Donald Trump is still campaigning. People talk, like when you hear people talk about him, they talk like he's still on the campaign trail. No, he's in the White House already. Like, he's in there and he's doing, whatever it is that he wants to do. People are focused on the midterms. People are focused on, the 2028 election, but they're talking like they're going to run against Trump again in 2028. You idiots. If Donald Trump runs for a third term, the fight is already fixed. If Donald Trump runs again in 2028, we don't have a democracy anymore. So why are we talking like you're going to run against him in 2028? It's mind-boggling to me what's happening right now.
Do you think part of this is, like, I think what Trump did is, because he says so much crazy shit, we almost stopped taking things seriously that are being said.
We bended that. That was since 2018.
Right.
Long time ago.
So now when someone like Steve Bannon says that, people don't take it sufficiently seriously, is what I'm hearing from you.
I think people are fatigued and they don't even know what they can do, because that's not our job to stop.
Right.
Because they told us that if we just go out there and vote in 2020, then we could stop fascism. 2020, President Biden won the election. Didn't stop anything. Didn't stop the fascism, did it? Didn't stop, Donald Trump from, getting back in the White House. Didn't stop what's happening. Now, we're literally watching things happen right now that shouldn't happen. Like,
what do you mean by that?
Doge. Like, Doge should not be happening the way that is happening. You have a guy who's not an elected official, literally telling the government how they can spend their money. Like, he doesn't have the authority to go in there and make these cuts that he's making. I want everybody to go back and watch, when I go back and watch, go back and research the National Partnership for Reinventing Government that Bill Clinton had in the 90s. What Doge is trying to do, Bill Clinton actually did it, and he did it the right way. He had Al Gore, who was an elected official, running it. He actually worked with federal workers and civil servants on where the cuts needed to be, and they were surgical with it. Like, they didn't jump in and do it within days. It took them months to make those cuts. And then when they did make those cuts, they did it with Congress. Elon Musk is not doing any of that. But he has the authority from the president, but doesn't have the authority, through Congress to do what he's doing. So if you're bypassing Congress, does that sound like democracy? Does that sound constitutional? Does that sound lawful?
And do you feel he's cutting the wrong things?
Clearly, like clearly, if you're cutting things and then realizing, oh, we got to bring these people back because we actually need, these guys that were working at the USDA, covering the bird flu, or these people that were working at these nuclear, power plants. Like, if we fired them and can't even hire them back because we don't even have their emails anymore, you are showing us that you're cutting the wrong things. Like, that's obvious.
So you sound worried.
Hakuna Matata. I'm sorry, Hakuna Matata. I mean, Yeah, you're always concerned, but to my point that I made a little while ago, what can we do? Like I did what I was supposed to do in 2020. That didn't stop anything. Like it's like voters one thing that I always hate about Democrats so much is that they create this sense of urgency in voters. But then when they get in the White House, they don't govern with that same sense of urgency. And that's why we're in this situation that we're in now. So it's even kind of hard to believe anything that they say now in regards to, threat to democracy, fascism. Like I would never believe that from them ever. I shouldn't have believed it this time, but I would never believe them ever again. But I said it over and over and over during the campaign season. You have, an administration that could get into the White House that actually is all of these things that y'all have been saying, all of these other Republican, candidates have been for years. Like they love to use those terms, threat to democracy, fascist. This was like the first time I heard that thrown around a lot. But you never governed with that type of sense of urgency, and you never, tried to stop what was happening or potentially going to happen with that type of urgency. So you told us this, didn't fight like it. Now he's back in the White House, and all of that talk went away. You saw President Obama chummy with him at, the Jimmy Carter's funeral. You saw Joe Biden literally say, "Welcome home" to the White House. Well, I'm like, well, goddamn, who welcomes Hitler? And I'm putting Hitler in quotation marks. Who welcomes Hitler home?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, why would you ever believe anything that, they say in the future?
And what's interesting is you're making some really valid points that a lot of people in America will agree with. And yet the Democratic brand is toxic as fuck.
It's disgusting. And that's why, you asked me about Governor Josh Shapiro earlier. Governor Josh Shapiro is great. I think that he'd be a phenomenal candidate for 2028 if we have an actual free and fair election, But the Democratic brand is so bad that it even makes the good candidates suck.
And why is it bad? Why has it got as bad as it has?
Because they're losers. It's just that simple. They're losers. They lost. They lost. And they didn't just lose an election, they lost the people. They lost broad swaths of their base, whether it's Latinos, whether it's, black people, they lost a large part of their base. Even white women. It's just like, they lost a large part of their base because nobody's buying what it is that they're selling. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is simply because they don't understand what's going on with everyday working class people. I think it's a party that got really bougie. It got really elitist. You had a lot of liberals who were making a lot of money, especially, a lot of liberals of color. Sometimes when you're on the hill, you forget what's going on in the hood. You stay stuck in that bubble of the hill, and you and your people are talking, and y'all have a language, and y'all have a understanding, and y'all might be making money. But when the last time you wouldn't talk to some folks in the hood to see what's really going on? Even when Joe Biden makes that comment, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. He got that from the black people he was around. He didn't make that up. He's not a freestyler. He couldn't come up with no bars like that off the top of his head. He heard that said to him by, I guarantee you, the black people who was around him. And old grandpa, you don't vote for me. You don't know whether to vote for me or Trump, you ain't black. He thought he was cool when he said that because of the people that he was around at the time. So it's just like, man, you got to just plug in with, people who are actually connected to what's going on the ground.
It's a profound point, because I remember when they started using the term Latinx, and my mum's Venezuelan. I remember saying to her, "Mama, how does it feel like to be Latinx?" And she went, "¿Qué coño es Latinx?"
What does that mean? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, basically, what the hell is Latinx? And it's just, there were times where it seemed like they were doing it on purpose to alienate people. That people aren't worried about that. No Latino in the history of the universe has ever been worried, apart from about the trans issue, because they've got bigger things to worry about.
Man, I ended up me and my co-host DJ Envy, we ended up in a commercial for Donald Trump that they said was like the most impactful commercial of his campaign, because I'm sitting at home watching football, and I see this commercial that says Vice President Kamala Harris is for transgender inmates receiving surgeries, and it was like, this is what your taxpayer dollars are going to. I remember perking up like, what the fuck? Right? Like, and I'm a supporter. Like, not only do I support her, I consider her a friend. I'm like, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that shit. Like, that's literally what my mind said. I'm like, what? And you heard her say it. I'm sure it was, taken out of context, but she said it at, on the commercial. And so I said it on the air the next day. I was like, yo, did y'all see that commercial that ran during the football game? I was like, I don't know if it was the backdrop of football. If that was on during a reality show or something, I probably wouldn't have paid no attention. But you watching football and you see Kamala Harris wants to use your taxpayer dollars for transgender, inmate surgeries. Huh? Like, nah. And so he used that in a campaign. So to the point, if they hadn't been focusing on a minor issue like that commercial would have never been done, and I would have never had been able to state that. And here's the thing. I believe in everybody's right to exist. Everybody. Transgenders, I believe in your right to exist, right? I believe in your right to exist. But if you really want to help those people, and you know this isn't a winning political strategy, how about just get in the White House and help those people? Campaign on the big, broad issues, and then when you get in the White House, then you help those issues. Because it's a small community. It can't impact you, when it comes to, who votes for you in a real way. It's like, that's not a large number of voters. So just get in the White House on the big issues and then help them on the side. I don't know why that's a hard concept for them to understand.
I think it's because it's not that they don't understand. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said a lot of it is people who are very isolated in their world. And this is the shit that they talk about.
Yeah,
because
and
they
social media.
And social media, right? But they don't, if you're not concerned about your finances, if you're financially secure, if you're physically in a gated community, whatever, then this is the kind of intellectual bullshit that you can spend your time on, right? And so a lot of it seemed to me, at least from the outside, like almost like what they call virtue signaling, where you talk about shit so that people think you're a good person. But actually what they're doing in the process is alienating most people who don't care about it.
I remember when President Biden said, the trans rights issue is the greatest civil rights issue of our generation. What? like the great, like he tweeted this, he said it, the trans rights issue is I'm black. Y'all ain't figured us out yet. You know what I mean? How is it the greatest civil rights issue of a generation? But it's stuff like that that makes regular, everyday working class people feel like they don't even know what the hell is going on. Once again, I believe in everybody's right to exist, but you gotta be smart when it comes to politics and just political strategy. I remember the Latinx thing. I remember seeing that and immediately hearing the backlash from Latinos. So I'm like, well, who came up with this? Who was in a room brainstorming this and was like, Latinx. I still to this day don't even know what that shit means. I don't even know what I don't even know what that was supposed to even represent. But it kind of reminds me of like sometimes in media, I've been in rooms, especially in radio, and you'll have a consultant be like, so what is a 23-year-old white girl, a 23-year-old black girl from, Rahway, New Jersey, what are they into? And you look around the room and it's me, a black man, and it's my guy DJ Envy, who's a 40-something-year-old black man, and then at the time, our other co-host Angela Yee, she's a 40-something-year-old Asian and black woman. I'm like, well, where's the 23-year-old? Like, go get a 23-year-old black woman, go get a bunch of 23-year-old black women from Jersey and ask them what they're into. Why are you asking us? And I think that happens in a lot of rooms quite often. People sit around and try to determine what they think certain groups are into. And nowadays, when you can just pull out your phone and go on social media and ask ChatGPT, you're getting a lot of this from online. That's who you're crowdsourcing. And I don't think social media will ever beat just going out and being in the streets.
All right, then. Well, you said, wise people learn from other people's mistakes. Dumb people learn from their own. Are Democrats at least learning from their own? You're well connected. No. You talk to people. No?
No, not in any way, shape, or form. And it's actually sad. Like right now, some of my favorite voices that are actually in the Democratic Party who are actually elected officials are people like Jasmine Crockett, people like AOC. Those are folks that the whole party should be listening to. The Chuck Schumers, the Hakeem Jeffries, those guys who are in Democratic leadership, they need to get all the way out the way. They should actually resign. And I think that any Democrat who isn't out there actually fighting on behalf of the people or actually trying to, resist what is happening in the White House in a real way, I think that, those people should be primaried. I really do. Because if not, stop lying to us. Like when Chuck Schumer says things like, "Oh, the Donald Trump's bill is the worst bill, and it's going to hurt the American people, and we're not going to vote for this." But then a day later, you're going to vote for it because it's going to protect America, and it's America would be way worse if we didn't sign it and the government shut down. It's like, you can't tell me something is so terrible, but you're willing to support it anyway. At least try to negotiate. There's no negotiation. You just, bent to what it is, the Trump administration had in that bill. And that is very confusing to me as an American citizen. That is very confusing to me as a person who's voted for the Democratic Party in every election since, 2008. That is very confusing to me because what I really think is you like the bill, Chuck Schumer, you're just scared to say it. You're just too much of a coward to say, I actually like this bill. I'm gonna support it. That's what I personally think. I would respect that more than this bill is so terrible. Oh my God, it's gonna hurt American people. But you know what? I gotta sign it anyway because the alternative is worse. Once again, putting us in a situation where I gotta figure out what is going to cause me the least harm. Why is it always like that for Democrats? Why is Democrats, their strategy is always whatever causes the least harm? Why do we always constantly gotta have that as the options?
It seems to me the problem with the Democrat Party, Charlamagne, is very much like the Labour Party in our country, where you've got ordinary, regular people like yourselves whose interest is in making the lives of ordinary people better.
That's right.
And then you've got this fringe element who you want to talk about transgender rabbits or whatever it is, and making
rabbits who identify as bunnies.
Yeah, rabbits who identify as bunnies and whether that is acceptable. And we need to have a debate about the language but how we address bunnies. And you're there going, mate, people can't afford to pay their electricity bill. What are we doing? But they're the ones in charge.
That's right. Listen, man, I'm a cheer dad. So, we go on these cheerleading competitions and we go to these different cities and it's different parents there with their kids and it's always diverse groups. Always. Black people, white people, Asian people, Indians, Jewish people, it's a super diverse. Spanish people, Latinos. And I remember one time we were sitting at dinner because, it was the kids were having a team bonding dinner. So they were over here and all the parents are at the dough table. We drinking our wine, drinking our tequila, having a conversation. And I just remember the trans issue came up and it started with a conversation about furries. And somebody was like, what the fuck are furries? It was like, oh, furries are kids that identify as cats. And it was like a split second pause. And it was just like, okay, this shit is going too far. And then the women set it up like, God damn it, about time somebody said. And then we had a whole conversation about how all of that stuff is just ridiculous to be having those type of conversations in our schools, those type of conversations in politics. Like, we care about how we're going to keep food on our table and roofs over our head. Like, what a luxury it is.
So why aren't the Democrats, they listen to people like you, why aren't they hearing that message? Why aren't they making the adjustment?
You know what's so funny? Okay, last year, and this is why I look at all of them right now, and I'm like, y'all all so full of shit. Last year, I'm public enemy number one amongst liberals, right? I'm the black person on a platform that people always said was super left-leaning when really I'm just a curious person. I'm willing to talk to both sides. I'm willing to hear good ideas from anybody as long as it's a good idea. So I guess they felt like, yo, that's ours in a way, which we are. I always say we're the people's show. But when you just start being objective and calling things for the bullshit that it is, the way I feel like I've always done. Now all of a sudden, since I'm not using your talking points, and all of a sudden now that I'm not, speaking the language that you want me to speak, now all of a sudden I'm MAGA. But man, now that the election's over, I hear a lot of talking points that I've been saying myself for the last 2 or 3 years. Like I'm like, damn, I've been said that, or damn, I've been was saying that about Democrats. Like y'all just realizing Democrats' messaging sucks. Y'all just realizing that the language of politics is dead. Like really? Now y'all want to have conversations about how President Biden should have stepped down. I remember when I said that on the Daily Show, December of 2023. It was like off with his head. Like I remember there was a young lady. She was on MSNBC with my homie Stephanie Rule. I can't remember the young lady's name. She's a professor somewhere, and Stephanie Rule just literally just bought me and Killer Mike up. Like they were talking about Trump's shoe, Trump's sneaker, and Steph goes, "So why don't guys like Charlamagne and Killer Mike?" Before she could finish her sentence, the woman was like, "Because they need to read a book. Both of them are Russian agents. They're spreading Russian propaganda." I'm like, huh? What the fuck? Like, I'm literally can I watch all of these shows? I'm watching it like, why the fuck, what is she talking about? But that is how they were doing us back then. We were just ahead of the curve. Like, I'm hearing people say things now like, we gotta hold Democrats' feet to the fire, and, they can't just take us for granted anymore. And, they gotta know that our votes matter, and we're just not gonna be beholden to them for no reason. People have been saying that for the last 10 years. Like Candace Owens had the whole Brexit movement. That's what that was about. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and not just Candace, there was people on the left that were saying that over the last decade. Why are y'all just coming to that conclusion now, way after the fact? If y'all would have had this honest conversation 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we might have put the party in a better place.
Charlamagne, let's cut to the quick here.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to me a pretty racist attitude by the Dems. To look at somebody through the color of their skin and go, you're going to vote this way, you're going to think this way, and if you don't, I'm probably going to hurl racial epithets at you. Mm-hmm. Isn't that just racism? Can we just call it what it is?
The 46th president of the United States of America told me that if I don't vote for him or Donald Trump, then I ain't black. Like, I don't know if you would call it racist, but it's definitely something. It's racial. It's definitely a entitlement. Black people are supposed to support us. We are the party that, gave them civil rights in the 60s. We're the party that granted them the right to vote. Like they're supposed to support us. And it's like they can't understand that this is a very, what have you done for me lately? Yeah, okay. And by the way, you didn't give us the first black president. America went out there and voted for the first black president. I hate when they use that. Like, hey, we gave y'all the first black president and the first black woman on the Supreme Court and the first, black woman vice president. It's like, no, people went out there and voted for, President Obama. And, I voted for President Biden because of who he had as his second in command, Vice President Kamala Harris. And that administration, put in Ketanji Brown Jackson. So it still all boils down to the voters. You didn't give us anything. So, I don't know. I don't know if racist is the word I would use, but it definitely is. They feel entitled to our votes because we are black.
And it just seems you wouldn't do that with any other group, even Latinos. You wouldn't really do it with Latinos and just go, oh, hey, Pablo, come over here, mate, vote for us.
Not only wouldn't they do it, they didn't do it. You hear plenty of stories about, when the vice president, became the candidate, there was people in her team that felt like they had the black vote all sewn up. So they wanted to go focus on other communities. Oh my God, what another political miscalculation. You really ain't talking to nobody. You really ain't talking to nobody outside of the Hill if you thought that, because black people have been the loudest about, how they feel about the Democratic Party. They're discussed with the Democratic Party, what the Democratic Party isn't doing. You just haven't been paying attention. You just dismiss those black people. You want to label those black people MAGA, or you want to tell those black people, oh, you're just going to try to help Trump win. No, I am your consumer. I am your voter base. I'm telling you what's the problem and you're just dismissing me. So you want to go run around with Liz Cheney and try to get those Republicans who don't give a damn about you and aren't going to vote for you anyway. You spent a lot of money in the Latino community wooing those voters, and they gave you their ass to kiss too, and more than 50% of them went to go vote for Donald Trump. So guess what you should have been doing? Focusing on your base. But you know why you're afraid to focus on your base? Because your base is black. The majority of your base is black women. The majority of your base is black men. But you feel like if you focus on your base, that is a political death sentence to the rest of the country. To these hypothetical, white swing voters in the Midwest who be like, oh, they're too focused on race. No, how about just when you're in the White House and when you're in these positions of power, focus on actually doing things for your base. Your base will always be there for you. And then you can go out there and try to woo others. But you gotta take care of home first. Why do you think Make America Great Again messaging works? Why do you think America First messaging works? Because regardless of what color you are in America, if you see this country giving hundreds of millions of dollars to other countries, for war or whatever it is, and you're starving here in America, you like, well, goddamn. What about us? Take care of us. If you don't take care of those people at home, you're probably going to have some civil unrest. But if you were taking care of those people at home, nobody would complain about whatever y'all do in these other countries. Nobody would complain about the money y'all gave to other countries if you took care of home first. It's the same thing with the Democratic Party. If you actually took care of your base, then your base wouldn't complain about what y'all are doing for other people.
And it also shows an ignorance because they go Latino voters. And I'm like, who are you talking about? You're talking about Mexicans? You're talking about Peruvians, Argentines? Because I'm going to tell you someone who's half Venezuelan, you are going to find it very difficult to get a Venezuelan who's, rightly or wrongly, whatever you may think, experienced communism, or a Cuban to vote for the left.
That is a fact.
You just ain't, it ain't going to happen.
Latinos aren't monolithic, just like black people aren't monolithic. White Americans aren't monolithic.
No.
Like nobody's monolithic. So you have to, pick and choose who you want to talk to. And I think that Democrats do themselves a disservice by having a big tent party mentality. Mm-hmm. Because when you have a big tent party mentality and you have all of these different groups under this tent, you try to be all things to all people. So you go around Latinos and you singing dumb shit, suavemente, you know what I'm saying? You go around black people, they not like us, they not like us. You go around white people, you singing Taylor Swift. It's like, yo, how about this? How about just talk to all of these people like they're people? You know what all of these people want, because as I said earlier, human beings just want some money in their pocket and they just want to feel safe. How about create a broad message that every single American can understand and relate to? And that message is, oh, you gonna make me get some more money in my pocket? Cool. Oh, you gonna keep us safe? Cool. Everybody can relate to that. All of that other gimmicky, dumb shit. Nah, that ain't. They was wearing kente cloths and taking knees on Capitol Hill. Like, what are we doing? Like, come on, man. Like, come on. Stop.
Well, that's right. I think, and it's true in our country as well. People try to divide everyone along racial lines and talk to this group and this way and this. And actually, I think your point is exactly right, which is if you talk to people about their concerns, you actually find out the differences between black, white, Latino, etc., are much smaller than people like to pretend when it comes to those core issues.
That's right.
And, uniting people around that is going to be the winning strategy.
Before Charlamagne answers the final question at the end of the interview, make sure to head over to our Substack. The link is in the description, where you'll be able to see this.
Have you always envisioned yourself with the amount of fame that you have? You speak a lot about mental health and anxiety, but the profession you've chosen seem like they'd make that a lot harder.
Who do you see as the best, most important public figures right now who are having the most positive impact for Black Americans today? You've spoken a lot about wanting politicians who will help advance the Black community. What 2 to 3 things do you feel can be done to help the Black community?
Anyway, man, it's been great having you on. Before we go to our supporters and they ask you their questions, the last question we always ask is, what's the one thing we're not talking about as a society that you think we should be?
Ooh. The mental health issues that this current moment in politics is causing. And not even just this current moment, from 2016 to now. Like, I don't even think people are capable of having good faith conversations anymore because people have chosen sides and we're listening with the intent to reply, not with the intent to understand. And that's where the yelling comes in. That's where the screaming comes in, the over talking comes in, the you're right, you're wrong thing comes in. And that's just all driving us mad. I use that because I'm talking to the UK people. It's driving us mad. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's literally just making everybody batshit crazy. And we don't necessarily realize it. We don't realize how much, anxiety and bouts of depression, and PTSD, have probably shot up since 2016 just because of this political moment that we're in. And, I don't think this country has stopped to take a collective breath. I don't think the world has stopped to take a collective breath. And now that, Trump is back in there, everybody's definitely not taking enough collective breaths at all, because every day it's something. What Steve Bannon say? Flood the zone. Every single day it's something that's making you like, what? He said what? He did this? They doing what? They go, what? Who lost their job? Like, it's just so much going on, at one time. And I don't think people are thinking about the mental, the toll it's taking on people's mental health in this world.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on. Head on over to Substack where we ask Charlamagne your questions. When do you think the Democrats will have a presidential candidate that is humble about earning the vote of minority groups rather than having the assumed right to them?